Hey guys, welcome back. Today let's see real question and answers which was asked in the interview for 4 years experienced guy. Okay, so let's start Q&A. So the first question is what are ECS and ECR? Okay, so ECS is Elastic Container Service and ECR is Elastic Container Registry. So these are services in AWS. So what exactly these do? So Elastic Container Service, it is a fully managed container orchestration service which is provided by AWS. So this enables you to run, stop and manage Docker containers on EC2 instance or with AWS Fargate. So what is the difference between EC2 instance and AWS Fargate? EC2 instance, it will be managed by us. So we will have a VM of EC2 and then we will manage it. Okay. Whereas AWS Fargate, it will be totally managed by AWS. So there is no action required from our end. Okay. And then what is ECR? So ECR is Elastic Container Registry. So it is similar to the Docker Hub. So it is a fully managed Docker container service that allows developers to store, manage, and deploy containers. Okay. So in case if we take Docker Hub, actually it is public. In case if we need private, we can get it from them as a paid service. Or else in case if we are already using any of the cloud providers like Azure or AWS, we can get their own container service. Okay. Similarly, we have ECR, which is like AWS component. So we can use the same for saving the Docker images. Okay. So the next question is, how do I create Docker images and push them to Amazon ECR? Okay. So in Docker, in case if we have to push any of the image to the Docker Hub, then actually we will do just Docker push and then we will give the path, repo path, right? So, but the first thing is like in Amazon, first we have to authenticate Docker to the ECR registry, because in case if we don't have authentication to the ECR registry, then we will not be able to push those Docker images. So how we can push? So we can push it using this command like AWS ECR get a login password, and then we have to provide the region as well. Okay, we have to provide the region, and then we have to pass in the Docker login username and AWS password. Also we have to pass in the account ID, and then we have to pass in the region, and then we will have this domain. Okay, first thing is we have to authenticate, then we have to build the image, and then we can tag using these images. So the main thing is when we tag, it will have this domain amazonaws.com. Okay, so it will have this tag, and then directly we can push Docker push and then account ID and then the same image which you get here. Okay, so these are the steps. The first thing is you have to authenticate, then you will build the image, then you will tag. When you are tagging, it should have the domain name of amazonaws.com with the tag of your application. Okay, then when you push, you should give this account ID same what you do here. So what is the common thing? Everywhere you have to give your account ID, and then you have to give these things like ECR region and then amazonaws.com. Okay, the same thing. So next question. In a multi-account setup with AWS account formation, how can I create a single IAM role across all accounts? Okay, so what is the requirement? I have to create a IAM role in all the accounts. For example, if we have 100 accounts, in each and every account we have to create a IAM role. For example, let's take Kubernetes admin IAM role. Okay, so we have to create this in all the accounts. So how we can achieve that using AWS cloud formation? So we should use AWS Cloud Formation stack sets. Okay, we have something called stack sets in AWS Cloud Formation. We have to use that one with the service managed permissions. So this allows us to create IAM role in multiple accounts. Okay, just remember this thing. We have a option called AWS Cloud Formation stack set with service managed permissions. So what are the steps? First, we have to define IAM role. Okay, we have to define the IAM role in the Cloud Formation template. Then use stack sets. Okay, these stack sets with these service managed permissions. Okay, we have to manage the permissions, right, for a service. So we have to choose this permission, and then we have to deploy the stack set to OU. So OU is organizational unit. So for example, whenever you deal with multiple accounts, you should always remember there will be organizational unit or account IDs. Okay, so you have to deploy the stack set to OUs. Okay, so the next question. So if I have 450 MB of Docker image, what are the best practices to optimize and reduce its size? Okay, so in case if you have like a huge image, As we have seen previous videos, we have discussed this multiple times. So use minimum base image. Okay, so we can use alpine or distroless images so that the base image will be very minimal, and then we can remove unnecessary packages and tools. So no need of keeping unnecessary tools, only the packages which are required for the application to run. If we have those packages, that is fine. So we can remove all the unnecessary packages, and then use multi-stage build. Okay, so always we should try to adapt multi-stage build. So in the first stage you will have rich base image, and then we will be creating the image, and in the second build you will be just keeping the required images, and so that we will have the least sized image. Okay, and then we have to reduce the image layers as well. Like when we create a Docker image, everything will be created in layers. Okay, so we can in case if there is a layer which is repeating or something, you can make everything in a single layer. Like in case if we can do it in single line, we can make it a single line, and then we will create a single line. Okay, and then clean cache and temporary files. If there are some temporary files in those, we can remove those as well, and then we can scan and analyze for any of the vulnerabilities using Trivia or Docker Slim. Okay, what is the difference between Docker and Kubernetes in container orchestration? Okay, so Docker, it is a container engine, whereas Kubernetes is container orchestration. So it will manage the containers, but in case if any of the containers is deleted, then we have to manually start it. Okay, whereas Kubernetes, in case if the container or pod is deleted, it will try to restart it automatically. Okay, and for clustering, so we have something called Swarm, and it is like full featured clustering. Kubernetes itself is a full featured clustering. Okay, and then scheduling, so we have manual and basic. Okay, and then we can have advanced scheduling. We have cube scheduler, everything, right? So all the schedulings will be taken care by that one. And scaling, so in case if you have to manage the scaling, we have something called Swarm. You can use that one. And in Kubernetes, it is auto and declarative. Just if you write the YAML file, and it will scale. You can configure replicas equal to 5, 6, whatever it is. Will be able to scale it. Okay, and networking, it is simple bridge network. And in Kubernetes, we will have complex and cross node support, and then we will have multiple plugins as well, like Calico, OVN, many things are there. Okay, and then next question, how a pod-to-pod communication happen in Kubernetes? Okay. So in Kubernetes, each pod gets unique IP. Okay. For each pod, we will have unique IP, and all pods can communicate directly without any network address translation. Okay. Using flat network provided by CNI plugins. So we will have the container network plugins, right? So using that, it can communicate. Okay. So pod-to-pod communication even across nodes works seamlessly with routable IPs. So in case if we have some routable IPs, those things can work seamlessly. Okay, and then optional network policies can restrict this communication. So in case if you have to restrict any of the communication between pods, we can use it using network policies. Okay, so to restrict the pod-to-pod communication in Kubernetes, we can use network policies. Okay, so these Kubernetes resources that define rules to allow or deny traffic. So what are the things where we can define these network deny rules? One on pod selector. Okay, we will have the labels, right? So on labels we can define, or else on the namespace level we can define, or else we can configure ingress or the egress rules. So based on that, the pod to pod communication can be restricted, or else we can restrict ports or IP addresses. Okay, so based on that, the pod to pod communication can be disabled. And then what is the difference between container and pod in Kubernetes? Okay, so this is similar to this one. Okay, this is called Docker, and then it is very simple. As we know, container, it is this like it is a single executable unit, and pod is the smallest component in Kubernetes. So a pod is logical host of one or more containers. Yeah, so in pod, as for logic, we should have one container, but we could have like sidecar containers as well. For example, if we, some tasks needs to be started, then we can use sidecar or something. So we can have two containers max. Okay. So a container is single executable unit, and pod is logical host, and it can contain one or more containers. But always it is recommended to have one container. But in case if there is a need, we can have some sidecars as well. Okay, and the containers inside the pod, so all the containers inside the pod share same IP, port space, and volume. Okay, so if in case if we are getting some IP address for pod, the same IP will be applicable to container as well. Okay, how is load balancing achieved within pods in Kubernetes? So how we can achieve load balancing? So we have different load balancing, internal load balancing. So in Kubernetes we have default balancing. Okay, so these things are from services like cluster IP, node port, and load balancer. Okay, so cluster IP, it is for internal communication, and then for node port it is have a port open on the node. Okay, it is from the range of 30,000 to 32,676. Okay, and then load balancer, we can use any of the cloud providers load balancer, okay, to enable this one. And external balancing is done using ingress and external load balancer. Yeah, same thing. Like these load balancer, it can be used here as well, okay, using application load balancer and nginx. And then round robin and other algorithms are applied through kube proxy. Okay, so these round robin, it is through kube proxy. And how can I fetch all EC2 instances, okay, across all AWS accounts and regions? Okay, we will have multiple regions like US East 1, US East 2, AP South 1, AP North. So we will have multiple regions, right? And multiple AWS accounts. For example, if you are working in organization, we can't have single account for all the teams. So each team will have a separate AWS account. So okay, now what is the requirement? I have to fetch all EC2 instances across all AWS accounts of all the teams and across all the regions. So what is the use? Like how we can achieve? So previously we have talked, right? Like in case if we are going to use all AWS accounts, we have to use AWS organizations. Okay, this is the first thing you have to remember always. Okay, so use AWS organizations plus IAM role assumption. So we have to assume a role, IAM role, and then we have to use AWS config plus AWS config aggregator. And then we have to loop through all the regions, like we have to go through each and every region, use describe instances. So we will get this one. And then we can use some Python or Boto3 script with STS of IAM. Okay, so then we can assume the role, and then we can get all the details of all the EC2 instances. Okay. Okay, next question. How can I fetch all EC2 instances from all accounts within a specific AWS organization? Okay, so even like we may have multiple AWS organizations, right? So in case if you have to get from a particular any of the one organization unit, then you can use organization API. Okay, so using organizations API, we can list accounts under organization unit, and then we have to assume role. Okay, whenever we have to check, we have to assume a role of that particular service. And then also we can use Boto3. Okay, Boto3 is the AWS service using which we will be able to get all the details. Okay, so using Boto3 we can call describe instances, and then we can aggregate that data into any of the S3 bucket or DynamoDB. Okay, if two VPCs in different AWS accounts, okay, we have two different AWS accounts, for example dev and test team, and then two VPCs. Okay, we have two different VPCs and have the same CIDR block. Can VPC peering be established between them, and what are the alternatives? Okay, so in case if we are having like different AWS accounts and we have same CIDR block, then actually like VPC peering cannot be established. Okay, no overlapping CIDRs are not supported in VPC peering. Okay, what is the alternative? We can use transit gateways. Okay, we can use transit gateway with NAT, and then we can redesign one VPC CIDR if possible. Okay, and also we can use private links. Okay, so what happens in case if you have two VPCs in different AWS accounts with same CIDR block, then it is tough to establish VPC peering. Okay, so we have to use transit gateways, or else we have to redesign to have one VPC CIDR, or else we have to use private links. And then this is tricky question. Okay, we usually see 2 bar 2 status check on EC2 instance. So what does it mean if we now see 3 bar 3? Okay, so normally when we see when we create any of these instances, normally we will see 2 bar 2. When it is 2 bar 2, then it will come into the running state. So what are those things? Like what is 2 bar 2? It is system status check and instance status check. Okay, whether the system is running properly and the instance is running properly. Okay, those are the two checks. So in case if we see 3 bar 3, so like it like likely indicates any of the custom health check. So in case if we want to do any of the custom health check, so then in that case we will see something like 3 bar 3. Okay, so if any EC2 instance is hosted in management account and we create an AMI backup, okay. So if we create an EC2 instances and then if we create an AMI backup, how can we share that AMI with child accounts? Okay, so we have to share it with the child account. So how we can do? So first we have to modify the AMI permission. Okay, how we have to modify? We have to give the permission for the child account. If you see AWS EC2 modify image, so we are modifying the image and then we are passing the image ID and then AMI, and then we have to give the launch permission. Okay, in the launch permission, if you see add user ID child account. Okay, so here we have to share the AMI with the child account, right? So here we have to give the child account ID. Okay, so that if we use this one, we'll be able to give permission to the child account. Okay, also share the associated snapshots, so we can share all the snapshots which you have taken as well. Okay, next question. So after sharing an AMI with child account and launching the instance, it is launching and terminating automatically. What could be the reason? Okay, so you already shared the AMI with the child account. Okay, and you are launching a new EC2 instances using the AMI ID which you shared. Okay, it is launching and terminating automatically. Okay, it is launching but automatically it is terminating. So what could be the reason for this behavior? So this can happen because of missing EBS snapshot. For example, if there are any snapshot EBS snapshots permission issue, then you will have this issue. Or else, in case if AMI uses encrypted snapshot and if you forgot to share the key with them, then also this issue will happen. Okay, and launch configuration incompatibility. So in case if you have configured some launch configuration, but what you have given, if it is not supporting the current machine, then also like this issue may happen. Okay, and then user data script failure. For example, if you are writing some user data before the startup, and if that script fails, then also like you will have this issue. And then for example, if you have some security group or subnet issue, then also like we will have this issue. Okay, so this is also like important. Okay, so how can we identify if an AMI we shared as an issue that might be causing the instance to launch and terminate automatically? Okay, so how we can identify that one? So check EC2 console instance status unlocks. Okay, by checking the status unlocks, we will get to know whether the AMI is having any issue or not. Okay, and then we can enable the monitoring. Okay, so when we enable the monitoring, obviously we will get to know in case of any issues. And then we have like AWS Cloud Trial and AMI related events. These are all like components of AWS. Okay, so all the logs of AWS will be available here. Okay, or else we can use System Manager. Okay, using System Manager, we will get to know the issues. And else we will can review the CloudWatch logs. Okay, by default we will have CloudWatch. You can configure that one, and in the CloudWatch logs we will see in case of any issues. Okay. So, what are the steps involved in configuring a three-tier architecture in AWS? For example, you have to configure a three-tier architecture, and then what are all the steps involved in it? Okay. So first is presentation layer. Okay. So in the presentation layer, you have to configure the application load balancer and auto scaling groups of EC2. Okay. Or in case if you are using ECS services, you can configure that one. Okay. And then application. So for application we should have auto scaling group, right? So for example, we have application, that application has to scale in case if there is more load, so we have to use ASG, auto scaling group. In case of ECS, in case if it is like self-managed by AWS using Fargate, then it is automatically scalable, and then we can use private subnets. Okay, this is the second step. And then database layer. Okay, in database layer we will be configuring the database to save the important data. Okay, so we can use RDS or Aurora of AWS, or else in case if we these databases, we can configure it in multi-AZ zone for high availability. Okay, so when you configure it in multiple availability zones, we will have high availability. And also we have to use VPC security groups and subnet separation. Okay, so that we can configure the three-tier architecture. So we have DB, app, and presentation layer, and then security. Okay, so everything is involved. And then next, so if we are trying to download or save an RDS backup to an S3 bucket, but RDS is not connecting to S3, so how can we troubleshoot this issue? So we have to check, we have to ensure like RDS has correct IAM role attached. For example, if you have RDS and if a wrong IAM role is attached, then obviously like it will have issue in connecting to that one. Okay, so we have to check this IAM role, and then we have to check the bucket is in the same region. In case if you have RDS in US East 1, like even the bucket should be in the same region. Okay, and VPC endpoint for S3, if it is using VPC only RDS, then also like the issue will happen. Also like we have to verify bucket policy allow access to RDS, like RDS should have access for the bucket. Okay, and then we have to enable enhanced logging so that we will get to know in case of any errors or something. Okay, so these were the questions which were recently discussed with a guy. Okay, so in case if you have any queries, please let me know. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Bye guys.